Damokeyes, how you doing? Damian Keys here. Welcome to the hashtag Ask Damo Show number 8. We are motoring through these. We have some questions on the wheels of steel. As always is Mr. Morgan M. James.
Hello guys.
Go and follow him on his Instagram because he's Instagram famous. This week we have some questions, but also someone has very kindly sent us in a package. So if you have any merch, if you've got a single out, if you've got an album out, if you want to get a little bit of traction, no, it's not a lot, but if only I had a knife. Oh look, a very big knife. If you want to get a bit of traction, you are always welcome to send things in because we like to promote. We like to promote bands. So let's have a look, see what we've got. Ooh. You, Morgan, read this.
Yeah.
And I will read the mug. Look at that. We need a new mug. It's about time we had a new mug. Ah, it's the boys from Omnibus. Nice. Love it. Love this. Go and check out Omnibus. Brilliant people. Brilliant boys. Love them. Maybe I'll swap from the Ask Damo mug to the Omnibus mug for next week. What does it say?
It says rules of the mug prior to use of your new your new mug. Rule number 1: take a picture of yourself, otherwise known as a selfie, with lips pursed as if to drink from your new dispenser. Then pop that pic on Instagram and/or Facebook. Then tag the band in your post, e.g. #Enibis. Rule 2: repeat by getting everyone you know to do the same over the course of the mug's lifetime. End of rules. A copy of these rules are available on request.
Love the rules, love the game. I will be doing this. This will go on my Instagram in the next couple of hours. Morgan will go and take a picture of that. Love it, love that for the Instagram. We're live on Instagram, we're live on Facebook. If you've got any questions you want to join in, then get cracking. Have we got questions?
We do have some questions,
yes.
Damian.
Can you imagine the day where we don't have any questions?
Can you imagine? Right, question number 1. How do you know what your covers band is actually worth?
Okay.
That's from @Jetfire Productions.
Good starting question. How do you know how much your covers band's worth? So we're musicians. We can start making money out of what we do. I have a history of making money as a musician. I started off when I was 18, 19, so I had a record deal ended, at which point I needed to make money. I looked around at my skill set. I had no GCSEs, well I had one GCSE. I wasn't academic. I didn't have experience in anything other than sitting down in my bedroom playing bass for a long time, and I wanted to figure out how I was going to make money. At the time, covers was the thing that I did. Started playing pubs, I started playing social clubs, started playing anywhere and everywhere that would have me in order to get experience and to start getting paid. But in that order, I knew from an early age that it wasn't just about getting paid, it was about how I could get better and become more employable, and therefore that would then in turn start to build up money. So how do you know? Because I do get messages on a regular basis from covers bands who aren't getting work, they aren't getting enough gigs, or that classic thing where you get a bunch of gigs in the summer and then nothing else. And the way I look at this is in the very next room we have a management company which manages 1,500 gigs a year, over 30 bands. Each band averages 50 gigs a year. Some of them get up to, the band I was in, got up to 135, 140 gigs in a year. The way I look at it is, in order to get 50 gigs a year, you need a lot of things to go right for you. In order to get 60, that's getting really tough. 50 is a good level to gauge yourself with. 70, incredibly hard. If you start getting up to 100 gigs, that is almost impossible because you need every star aligning for you. Because if you take out summer being the busiest time, if you look at Saturdays being the busiest day, once you've actually eliminated all the Saturdays in the whole year, including January, February, when nobody books a band, including November, all of a sudden very difficult to get those Saturdays. Fridays, even harder. Outside of the summer, even harder, and Christmas. Once you start getting into trying to get Thursday gigs or Sunday gigs, now we're starting to find out who the real players are. So for a band to get 100 gigs a year, really hard. You start getting up towards 150, you are magical. So how much do you charge? Because there is no rule about this, but you do need to look around. And what bands tend to do is they tend to look around and they go £1,000, because that, when it comes to weddings and corporate gigs, that tends to be a marker in the sand. £1,000 is what you want to get paid for a band, and that would include everything. And not because that's what you should be charging, because that tends to be this magic number that clients are looking around about when they're looking for a band. But the problem is this is a very, very noisy area. And back in the day, which was a Wednesday, when I first started, And everyone was playing funk and disco, and I would turn up and I'd have to play YMCA, and I'd have to play Hi Ho Silver Lining and Walking on Sunshine, I Will Survive. First I was afraid. I mean, as bass player, it was great, loads of great bass lines, but as music, it wasn't music I wanted to play and be proud of, but it paid the bills. Nowadays, you can play Biffy Clyro and the Foo Fighters. I mean, this is a different time. But because of that, and because now it is a multi-million-pound industry, people take this shit seriously. People are turning up with real gear, with real marketing, with real experience. So you've got to compete. If you're going to compete, you can't just jump in at the same price as everyone else and hope for the best, unless you have an agency on your side or you have a marketing background and you are going to spend money in advertising. So let me tell you this. So I own an agency, one of the biggest agencies in the country. I can tell you that the advertising spend on that is probably 10, 15,000 a month. Like, you've got to compete with that if you're going to be a band. So your best bet is either to get with an agency or figure out some real smart ways in your local area to start building up the reputation to start getting gigs. And the way to do that is to stop thinking about cost and start thinking about reputation. That's the key. How much is your band worth? How much can you get a gig for? If you can get a gig for 50 quid, you're worth 50 quid. If you can push it to 300 quid, you're worth 300 quid. The way it works, when I started the last band I did, so let me tell you a story on this. This is when I finished BIM. I drove home from selling a company. I knew at that point, because of the shares and what the company was worth, I knew I would be set for life. I knew I wouldn't have to worry about money again for the rest of my life, but I also knew that that wasn't the end. I was 30 years old, give or take, maybe 29, 30 years old, and I just thought, I want to do something. It was a stressful time. I turned to music. I turned to my bass because I knew that that was the thing that wouldn't let me down at the time. I got in a band with some friends and we started doing some gigs. In order to get those gigs, I just promised 10 free gigs. No money, I'll pay for it myself. I will just come and I'll do 10 gigs. I'm going to prove to you that we're a great bunch of musicians with a great skill, a great talent, and a great product, and we're going to come out and we're going to smash the gigs. If you get paid from it, if you can take some money from it, then good on you. But from our point of view, we're prepared to put this in to actually get that momentum going. That set up my entire management company, which ended up buying that agency. So you can see that how 10 free gigs sets you up for a multi-million-pound company if you go about it the right way. Whereas what people tend to do is they tend to want to do the same thing in originals bands. They want to jump in at the highest level. What's everyone else charging? Well, we deserve that too. It didn't work. At that point, this was 10 years ago, at that point I'd had 10 years of experience doing this 3 times a week. And I still knew that in order to get that product to market, you needed the respect, you needed the reputation around agents, around people in the area. So to go out and do a bunch of free gigs or cheap gigs in order to say, here, I've got an excuse to do more marketing, an excuse to build a reputation, but also an excuse to actually get out there and show the world what I can do. That to me was the most important thing. So how much is your band worth? That all depends, but there's no rules. If you want to do 5 gigs a year at 5 grand a pop, great. If you want to do 100 gigs a year, you're not going to charge 5 grand a pop. You're going to charge 700. You know, when we started off just going, what does everyone in the band want to charge? You know, if we can get 150 quid, great to start with. But then 5 years later, you don't want to charge that. You want to charge more. And 5 years later, you might not want to be out on a Thursday. You might not want to be out on a Sunday. So it's a very supply and demand thing. But the answer to this question is, to start with, you get whatever you can get away with, and then there's no rules. And also, this idea that you have to have one set fee, it's not true. A Saturday in August is a key day. A Thursday in January is not a key day. So trying to charge the same amount is lunacy, because if you can get, you know, 1,000, 1,500 quid, because you know you can get that in August, but you have to charge 600 quid in January, fine. It's not like people are going to say, hang on a minute, you charged less. You just go, yeah, I did. January, Thursdays. I wanted the gig. I took what I could get for it. So you don't have to have a one-size-fits-all price. What you do need to do is get the gigs. So start small, build up, and the key is that momentum. Get there as fast as you can, doing favors, getting out there, building the reputation, doing the marketing from it, and getting to that point where you are in the bracket of the same as the industry standard, and then pushing on from there.
Great answer, Dan.
Thanks.
Another great answer. All right.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Our current band name is good, but impossible to spell. but we can't agree on a name to change it to. And that's from @TomWoodsDrums.
Love this question, and this goes way past the band name to me. This is internal politics, and politics breaks bands. Politics breaks businesses. So think of it like this. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the band, right? You have got to get from destination A to destination B. And yes, it can still be artistic and it doesn't have to be financial, but you're still trying to get somewhere. You're still trying to get this music out. You're trying to get it heard. We are still marketers. We want people to listen to our stuff. We want it to be as successful as it can be. Internal politics slows everything down. So the question wasn't, is the band name going to work? The question was, we've got a good band name, but no one can spell it. You recognize a problem. That's really, really good. You're standing on stage, you're talking through a microphone, and you say the band's name, and everyone goes, how am I going to find that on social media? That's the world that we now live in. It's very, very difficult. We need to be social media friendly. We also need to be website friendly, and it needs to be memorable. It can't be so vague that it fits into too many things. So therefore, we can't just have a band name that nobody can spell. You recognize that, that's fantastic. The problem now is you're taking this to a committee, you're taking this to other musicians, and everyone's going, I don't like this. Now let me tell you something about committees. This is a huge problem, having a committee based project. I get asked all of the time, I don't do any anymore because I'm not a fan, but I get asked all of the time to be a judge of Battle of the Bands competition. These Battle of the Bands competitions, a lot of the time are judged as a committee. So I say, this was my favorite, this was my least favorite, and go through everyone. And then everyone in turn does the same thing, and it's an average of everything. The problem is anything with anything specific tends to get knocked down. And the people who are kind of average across the board gets put into pole position. And that is the problem with having a committee-based decision, is anything which is edgy or exciting, sometimes someone goes, oh, I'm not sure I like that, because there's something to love about it, but there's something to hate about it, and you've got this polar opposite. When you go, yeah, that's inoffensive, that's what a lot of the time you can end up with. So this is about internal politics, but for me, right now, this issue is slowing you down. If you're there with a band, you've got shit to do, man. We've got stuff to do. We've got music to write. We've got music to record. We've got marketing to do. We've got an audience to build. We've got an audience to look after. We're going to go on tour. At the moment, start of our journey, we don't have a band name. So the first thing I would do, couple of tips, is I would go onto Spotify and I would go onto a band or bands that you love, and I would start writing down 300, 400 words that pop up in that genre, that stick out to you, that you just look at and you go, that's a good word, and you write it down, and you write down hundreds and hundreds of words, and then you start melding them together, you start mashing them together and going, what about that word and that word, or what about those 3 words linked together? And I'd actually come up with a list, and then after that, you have a deadline. We are gonna have a name by this amount of time, because we cannot mess around with this. We've got too much to do, and this is the type of thing that goes on. And my second piece of advice is, you've made that decision, this is the right decision, you need a new band name. You've recognized that you need it. Too many bands go into this committee, can't decide, and then they convince themselves that their old band name is actually pretty good and they're going to stick to it. But you know there's a problem with it. So that has to go. You need a new band name. You need it to happen as quick as possible, because can you think of all the things that you have to do over the next 6 months? This is one of those things. So you need a deadline. If needs be, it needs to be a committee, fine. But other than that, it needs to be on the table where everyone says, are we happy? Are we all going ahead with this? Yes, off we go on to the next problem. This is internal politics. This isn't about a band name. This is about how you're going to make decisions going on and how you are going to all pull together so that you are deciding on the future of the band and how fast you can work. And that to me is more important than a name.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's good. Right, so Damian, we've been getting lots of questions this week about getting gigs. Can you talk about bands getting more gigs, including building from a local to a national level?
Yeah, we had 6 or 7 questions come through yesterday just about gigs in different formats, from how to get more local gigs, where to start getting gigs, how to break from local gigs to national gigs, how to get onto festivals, and they all all came together as you know, you guys are struggling with where to start with getting more gigs at the next level. Whether that next level is starting with getting gigs, or whether that next level is moving from where you are locally to nationally, or where you are from nationally into bigger festivals or headline slots. And this goes back to having some leverage. Whatever level you are at, in order to get from where you are at to the next level in life in general, you have to have a reason to move up. If you are going to go from local gigs to national gigs, there has to be a reason to do that. It can't just be because you want to do that. So you need to have some leverage. And so when you're moving up to the next level of gig, let's say, for example, you want to actually start getting some gigs in your local community, whether it's your audience, whether it's your networking ability, you have to be able to go and bring something to the party. So what I would do is I would find the reason that you're going to do gigs. New music, that's a good reason. Your audience is building and you want to actually start getting what you're doing out to your audience, that's a good reason. Because you've networked with other bands and you really get on well and you just go, oh, guys, we should do a gig together, that'd be really fun. There's another reason. Because you've been networking and schmoozing with promoters in the local area and chatting with them and actually giving a reason, there's another reason. All of these are good reasons, but you need to have a big reason to move from local level to national level. So for me, local level to national level, or from a local level to getting more gigs, you have to have something more than just, I want to do this. I think that is the key bit, that to me. So where to start next with these local gigs is got to be looking after the audience. It has to still be the number one thing. And I know I say it every single week, but right now, that is the key part. If we're not looking after that audience, there's no reason for them to come to a gig. Because if you think of it like this, you're going to go and do a gig and someone else is coming to you for that opportunity. And someone is saying to you, I want to come and support your band. What are you going to say to them? You're going to say, what are you going to bring to the party? It can't just be a time at a gig. I've got 20 minutes to fill. It's got to be, what are you going to do for me? How's this going to work? How do I benefit from me allowing you that slot? All of a sudden, there's 20 minutes free. It's going free. I've got 10 people who want it. Who's the best candidate? Who's going to whip up that crowd? What's the reason? Who's going to bring more people? People bitch and moan about promoters all the time. And they're like, oh, I did this gig and no one turned up. It's the promoter's fault. It's everyone's fault. If someone doesn't turn up to a gig, or people aren't turning up to gigs, it's not the promoter's fault, it's not the venue's fault, it's everyone's fault, especially the band. If you can't bring people to that venue, it's not being marketed enough. Nowadays, that power and control is just as much in your hand as everybody else. Partially the promotion, partially the management, partially the venue, but also a big part of this is the band. If you can't bring people to a venue in a different area, you shouldn't be playing there. Stat, simple as that. So how do you get there? You start to build up the following in that area so that you can then start to play there. You've got to bring something to the party. It can't just be, we want to do more gigs. Think of it from your point. If you are in control of the gigs and someone is coming to you, at what point do you say to them, what do I get out of this? So it's brutal, but you've got to be brutal with this.
Oh. Are you ready for the final question?
I am ready for the final question.
The big one. All right. The final question is, what is the best way to continually market a debut single? And that is from Jackson Slater Official.
Jackson Slater Official. Yeah, this is an interesting one because we are still in this exhausting the creative. So I made a video. If you haven't seen this, it's on my YouTube. I think it's titled "I Changed My Mind About EPs." So a while back, I had a massive rant about EPs, and then that video went sort of semi-viral, and I started getting loads of people commenting on it, which then pushed it further. And I don't think I made my point clear enough, which is I'm not dead against EPs, but I am dead against EPs at the wrong time and how they're done. And people aren't thinking about why they're doing EPs. They're just going, that's the thing to do. So I made a second video, which I think is possibly the best video that I have made to help bands, which is about, it's about exhausting the creative. There's a difference between the Foo Fighters putting out an album and a newish band putting out an album purely because of the creative that you can get out of a new piece of music. So if the Foo Fighters come along and they release a single or an EP or an album, they have the experience and the network and the knowledge, and everyone knows who they are, the reputation, to be able to go and get on 1,000 radio stations to go and perform it. They also can get into 100 magazines, they can get onto 1,000 blogs, they can get onto 50 TV shows, probably 500 TV shows around the world. They can keep going before everyone says, I'm bored now, what's next? So you go until you exhaust that creative. Now, with a local band, in my head, there's no point in making that album if you're going to exhaust the creative in a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. So therefore, it's more important to break it down to a single, exhaust that creative, then move on to the next one. Exhaust that creative, move on to the next one. Because when you're in an up-and-coming band, you might be able to get into the odd magazine, you might be able to get onto the odd blog, you might be able to get onto local radio, but once that's done, it's not like you can go back the next week and the week after. So you're finding your level, and therefore it's better to have lots of small punches than one massive swing and hope for the best. In this instance, we're in the same thing. How do you keep on pushing a single? Well, I can give you 2 answers. Number 1, you just keep hustling, bro. The old Gary Vaynerchuk, hustle, hustle, pushy, pushy, pushy. Yeah, brilliant. But at what point does your audience go, oh, enough with this song? I know the song. What's the next thing that you're going to do? So therefore, you're looking for new audiences. So if you can do that, great. If you can get out to new gigs, it's a new audience. If you can have some advertising budget to push it out there to new people, great, new audience. But if you haven't got that, if you haven't got those reasons to get that new single out, then the momentum of something new comes up and goes down again. As soon as it gets to the top, it comes back down, at which point you are starting to flog a bit of a dead horse, and people are the important people who are coming with you on your journey, your audience, they're the ones who are losing out. So what you're saying here is, I want to find new people to promote that single. New people, that's great. But what about the people who are with you? What about the people who are saying, I really like you. I really like your artist, you as an artist. I really like you as a band. If you're not saying, don't worry, here's the next thing for you, then what you're doing is you're not looking after that audience. And that's the audience that's going to win for you. You know, finding the new person and saying, have you heard the new single yet? Brilliant. But it's much like a business that isn't looking after their client base. They're constantly looking after finding new people. Sales, 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 sales. Unless you've got really good customer service, what you're doing is you're selling once and then it's into the void. That is fine if you do something once. If you're in a market where you just sell once and then you don't need their services again, it's not ideal, but it's fine. You don't do that with a band. You're saying, we're going to do another one in a month, or another one in 6 months, or another one in a year. We need you to come with us on this journey. So therefore, you've got to be looking after the audience. So yes, you can keep pushing it. Yes, you can find new little rabbit holes to go down to find new audiences to push it to. But if you are not looking after the bulk of the audience when they're actually hearing the song and saying, this is really good, what's next? If you're not looking after them, then I fear that the audience will dwindle and you will fail. What happens is you get a big spike. If you look at YouTubers that have a massive push for a certain period of time and then they drop off the radio, and you go and look at their figures, you can see the numbers dropping because they're not looking after the audience. That's the biggest thing when YouTubers start dropping. They're not looking after the audience. People leave. They just go, no, I'll go and find my fun and my entertainment elsewhere. Same thing with music. So the key to this, in my opinion, the key to this is how you are going to look after your audience with more content, with more new music, with more stories, with more of your journey and more of your story. That's the bit that people want, and in that is new music and how you release that. But this idea of exhausting the creative, if you haven't seen that video, or if you haven't heard me talk about this before, I would go onto YouTube and just go and find the video, which is I've changed my mind about EPs, and see that idea about exhausting the creative. Once it's gone, move it to the side, on to the next one.
We'll link it below.
We will link it below. Fantastic, good.
That's all the questions.
Fantastic. So in which case, if you've got anything to send, like the Omnibus boys, then send it through. That will be in the link below as well, which Morgan will do. Other than that, if you've got any questions, come through, the usual thing. I've had a few people saying they're struggling with getting hold of me this week. I do apologise. The reason for that is I don't have a PA anymore, and I am generally an unorganised person. So bear with me for a couple of weeks while I sort this stuff out. But if you're not getting through to me, re-ask the question, because a lot of stuff comes through on Instagram, comes through on Facebook DMs. So I'm not ignoring you. I just missed it. Resend it if you want to get hold of me, and you will get hold of me. Otherwise, get involved in the comments below on any of the videos, because that to me is the lifeblood, the comments more than the DMs. So keep it cool, and see you guys next week.